vallons, ses clochers. Chaque région nouvelle nous fait soudain découvrir des trésors cachés. Du Rhône à la Rochelle, de la Garonne au souriant pays normand. Oh, que la France est belle, et comme on est heureux d'être un de ses enfants. J'habitais un coin du Midi au joli temps de mon enfance. Pour moi c'était le paradis, mais j'ai fait le tour de la France. Dans le train qui me transportait au milieu du doux paysage, je penchais mon jeune visage et le cœur joyeux, je chantais.
France in 1936 was a shell of its former self. The Great War from 1914 to 1918 had left a visible yet unhealed scar in the body of French society. By the 30s, the economy was not doing any better either. Pierre Laval was tasked with fixing the French economy in the shortest time possible. The hurry was caused by recent developments in the world around France. In 1933, Hitler came to power in Germany. Even then, many both outside and within Germany had an understanding that this new German government would eventually lead to a second Great War in Europe at some point. Similar concerns were raised in regards to the Soviet Union, with many in Western Europe being worried about the spread of communist revolution, as revolutionary literature had predicted. With all these fears, some people in Western countries, like France, believed that it would be up to their country to save Western civilization like they did in the Great War. And they decided that they will not just sit and watch as the world begins to burn a second time. It was not the first time that the radical right tried to take power in France, as François Delarocque, the leader of the Croix de Feu, attempted to escalate a right-wing protest into a coup attempt. But the police was able to disperse the crowd then, thus saving the fragile and unstable republic. This fumbling of taking power in France had completely discredited Delarocque in the eyes of younger radicals, with all eyes falling upon Charles Marat with his Action Français and Jacques Doriot with his Parti Populaire Français. Right-wing radical activities included funding nationalistic electoral campaigns to acquire more seats in the Chamber of Deputies, assassinations by the terrorist group La Cagoule, and protests all over the country by the youth wings such as the Camelot du Roi. Eventually, the fascists became so influential in French national discourse that they were even able to have Laval's ear, convincing him to shut down the Chamber of Deputies, which despite the protests of socialists, liberals and conservatives, they were powerless to prevent it as the Senate was on Laval's side of the issue. Now that the far right was free from electoral procedures and processes, they could now push through more government policies of their own vision, now unfiltered by politics of the old republic. However, not everyone was happy with the dismantling of French democracy by the fascists, encouraged by the now banned socialists and communists. The first priority of the fascists now was to take total control over the flow of information and eliminating political opposition. Those who protested the new status quo would be sent to concentration camps in rural France. Marat's monarchists were too marginal to matter, and Delarocque was too discredited. This left only one winner out of the power struggle over the control of the French government: Jacques Doriot.
Annoncé par M. Jacques Doriot.
Le gouvernement comptait sur l'aide de l'Amérique. Nous disions aux Français que Roosevelt ne bougerait pas le petit doigt pour nous. Le gouvernement recherchait l'alliance soviétique. Dès 1935, nous lui disions qu'elle était illusoire et nos prévisions se sont vérifiées point.
However, their lack of popular support did not prevent men like Charles Marat, Marcel Diat, and Marcel Bucard from becoming key elements in the new government.
Tenu à ce que la fête du travail fut solennellement célébrée en la capitale, dans un Paris enfiévré et meurtri, le 1er mai, des vieilles revendications ouvrières,
Now ruling France through a president who was just a front for his power, Doriot began realigning France's foreign policy to be friendly with Hitler's Germany. This new France's first action on the international stage was intervention in the Spanish Civil War, swiftly destroying the anarchists in Catalonia and helping the nationalists destroy the forces of the defunct Republic. Doriot proposed to Hitler to divide Western Europe into French and German spheres. But Hitler did not want to hear a thing about it. Thus, the French dictator saw this as a blank check to act independently. In 1938, German troops marched into Austria, marking the end of Austrian statehood and its absorption into Germany as another Reichsgau. Having implemented many policies which were called by the umbrella term Révolution Nationale, the French army was prepared to march into the Benelux. Belgium was no issue for the much more numerous Armée de Terre. Believing that Britain will be too scared to intervene on the continent against such a powerful alliance, Doriot gave the order to invade the Netherlands. However, he was wrong. Not wanting to see Europe fall to fascist powers, isolating Britain, the British Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, announced to the public via radio broadcast that the country is now at war with France.
I am speaking to you from the Cabinet Room at 10 Downing Street. This morning, the British ambassador in
Paris
handed the
French
government a final note, stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with
France.
The Second World War has begun.
Alle Straßen enden, hört unser Weg nicht auf. Wohin wir uns auch wenden, die Zeit im leeren Lauf. Das Herz verbrannt, im Schmerz verbannt. So ziehen wir verloren durch das graue Niemandsland.
In July of 1939, the French army began an offensive towards the Suez Canal out of Syria. Having reached the canal, the vital artery of the British Empire was cut, but the French army was unable to continue pushing any further into Egypt. That is until the Italian Duchy declared war on Britain.
Decisioni irrevocabili! La dichiarazione di guerra è già stata consegnata agli ambasciatori di Gran Bretagna.
By the end of January of 1940, Port Said was occupied by the Axis. The siege of Alexandria came to an end with a French victory. After securing North Africa, the French and Italians coordinated a naval invasion of Britain. The codename for this operation was Operation Sea Lion.
fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, carry on the struggle until in God's good time, the new world with all its power and might steps forth to the rescue and the liberation.
On August 11th, after Liverpool had fallen, British garrisons and armies on the White Island had surrendered to the French. The Lion had been slain by the Rooster, with remnants of the British government fleeing to Northern Ireland, where the Axis had no capability of landing, now that the waters were heavily guarded by the British fleets called upon from around the world.
De pouvoir regarder nos enfants en leur disant, malgré le mépris de certains, malgré l'hostilité d'autres, nous avons travaillé pour que ton sort soit bien meilleur que le mien, soit bien meilleur que le nôtre. Nous avons travaillé pour que tu sois plus heureux que nous. Voilà le lien que nous voulons faire aujourd'hui.
Now that all immediate threats were eliminated for the three major Axis powers, Doriot's France could now consolidate its gains and contemplate its next moves. France no longer needed to remain allied with Germany, as it got everything it wanted when French boots trampled over the Union Jack. Doriot declared that France and Germany will no longer be allies, as France has no friends, only interests. With Middle Eastern oil secured by the merit of French military superiority over the new independent Arab states, only the British garrison on Malta could potentially prove difficult. But pockets of British resistance remained isolated from the world. In February of 1941, Doriot proclaimed the formation of the Latin Entente. With Portugal and Spain joining this alliance, the French army made quick work of the British garrison on Gibraltar, concluding the battle for the Mediterranean Sea with a firm Axis victory, making the southern waters safe to traverse. Now, France had time to build up its army even more, until it satisfied Doriot's vision of an army to match the Wehrmacht. In June of 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union. For France, this spelled opportunity, as most German resources were now tied down in a war against one of the world's largest armies in a land with poor infrastructure. Now was the time to strike at the eternal enemy, the Hun. For the purposes of uniting Entente military command, the Paris Conference established that all Entente armies will be under French command, effectively turning its members into France's puppets. In January of 1942, France declared the war on Germany with the aim of incorporating the left bank of the River Rhine into France. After a year of fighting, combat was yet to move beyond Germany's western border regions. As it turned out, French industry was not as adequate as believed, and Germany was not as weak as it was believed to be, despite its army being stretched thin. Attacks, followed by counterattacks, continued between the two sides. By September of 1943, 3 cities were surrounded: Dortmund, Essen and Düsseldorf. The Rhine had been breached.
suis touché!
malgré le mépris de certains, malgré l'hostilité d'autres, nous avons travaillé pour que ton sort soit bien meilleur que le mien, soit bien meilleur que le nôtre. Nous avons travaillé pour que tu sois plus heureux que nous. Voilà le lait.
By the beginning of 1944, most of Germany's industrial regions in the west were occupied, but armored counterattacks continued keeping French generals on their toes.
Jahren deutsche Geschichte. Das deutsche Volk ist nicht mehr das Volk der Ehrlosigkeit, der Schande, der Selbstzerfleischung, der Gleichmütigkeit und Fleiß.
In August, a major American force was destroyed in Cherbourg.
Hostile units spotted!
Making for the wall!
We did it!
French leaders were starting to understand that American industry and the ability to land anywhere at will eventually become a problem. By the end of the year, French forces were expelled out of Egypt, with American forces only stopping in Palestine. The situation was not any better in the West, seeing how long the fighting is taken, both in terms of time and millions of lives being lost. The soldiers and people at the home front lost all faith in the war and the possibility of seeing a quick end to it.
Jamais n'obtint mieux que la tolérance inquiète des pouvoirs publics et la haine de la bourgeoisie est devenue fête nationale.
From 1942 up until now, strange requests came from Danish officials asking for French rifles to be sent. As it turned out, the Danes were planning a rebellion against the Germans after they surrendered after just 6 hours of fighting when the Germans initially invaded. Now, in June of 1945, they rose up, aiding the French troops. In return, de Gaulle's tank armada was redeployed to the newly formed Danish front. In January of 1946, forces were redeployed to deal with an insurgency in French-occupied Scotland, with it being swiftly put down. In March, seeing the futility of trying to liberate the British homeland, the Western Allies have begrudgingly agreed to a ceasefire with the French nation. Now, all attention was on Germany in Europe. Berlin was now completely surrounded, meaning that the days of the German Reich were numbered.
C'est quoi?
as the French troops combed through the war-torn city. Some troops were able to find the dead body of the German Führer, Adolf Hitler, burned to a crisp. Next to him was the body of an unknown woman. After another few months of fighting in other parts of the world, everyone could finally wake up to the sound of birds singing and the wind blowing, rather than gunfire, bomber engines, and the rumbling of tanks. Most of Western Europe fell to France after a negotiated peace. However, France emerged out of this war heavily damaged in its psychologically broken society, reminiscent of the immediate aftermath of the Great War. Economically, France was bankrupt, as almost 7 years of non-stop war spent all of France's financial resources. There no longer was a colonial empire to extract valuable resources from either. As in exchange for peace with the Western Allies, French negotiators agreed to completely leave certain regions of the world that either could not be adequately protected or were lost to the Allied forces in the fighting. Indochina, Chinese treaty ports, and sub-Saharan Africa, as well as the Middle East and many other places around the world, were forever lost. In order to begin the process of economic recovery, the entire army had to be demobilized, and eventually all the Latin countries allied with France were incorporated into a new superstate. Under the conditions of the new post-war world, the name Latin Entente was no longer proper to represent the reality of France's situation. The Treaty of Brussels was signed, including a clause that Germany is to be exploited until it's dead before the French state and nation and other Latin peoples will be deemed as repaid. Seeing how France was situated in the North Atlantic region with puppet regimes in Britain, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization was founded. The story of France was not over, neither was the story of other countries over either. But all of their glory days were now forever in the past, as France and other European states stepped into this new world broken and damaged. While some conflicts continued in places like China, Europe was too stretched thin to want another war, now shared mostly between French fascists and Russian communists. If there was to be a war, it will not be a hot one like it would be traditionally. It will be more subtle, cold.